The Walking Dead Rewrite, Season 8, Episode 13, Walk With Us. We hear screams in the background, the sound of flames, as we're now back, as we see Hilltop on fire in the background. Carol and Diane are firing arrows down on the walkers in order to keep them outside of the Hilltop walls. Carol says, "That wall's not gonna hold." Diane would say, "It doesn't matter. It's not about this place anymore. It's about the people. And we're gonna get out of this a lot." Out of nowhere, she would get shot in the head with an arrow, and Carol looks up to see dozens of arrows being fired into the hilltop. She quickly has to jump off the guard post as she falls to the ground, and she hurts her knee. Carol is now down as she sees arrows being fired all across the hilltop with everyone inside. As we see several of the hilltop fighters are getting killed by these arrows. As Carol is staying down and taking cover, she watches as several of their men fall before their eyes. But then we cut to outside the hilltop walls as we hear the sound of kids screaming, and Negan hears this and says, "Enough." Alpha says, "We are almost done here. Why the hesitation?" Negan would look genuinely pissed off at this, and I do believe that that would be in touch with his character because, again, Negan does not like harming children, and Negan would hear what's going on and he would see what's happening, and that would very much upset him. As Negan looks genuinely pissed off and says, "Look, I'm down to kill the people that try to kill my Alpha, but those are children in there, Alpha." And Alpha would say, "So was my daughter. But death works in many different ways. Walk with us, Negan. Our victory is far from over." As we see the smoke and as we see the hilltop on fire right in front of them. Now, after the intro, we would hear the fires, we would hear an echo voice of Lydia saying, "The time of the whispers is over." As we then see her shoot that whisper that we saw her shoot, but then we see one of the guards at the gate says, "The wall is coming down, the wall is coming down." As we see the hilltop wall starts to fall, as we see the fire, zombies, and walkers get in, as we see they are making their way through Hilltop, as you have Rick, as you have Michonne, as you have a lot of our characters and fighters that are running up to this and killing as many of them as they possibly can. But as we see, more arrows on fire are being fired into the hilltop. As Rick and Michonne are fighting these walkers, as Michonne then says, Rick looks behind him to then see the Barrington house is just absolutely just ruined. As we see it's on fire, we see them fighting these walkers, but then we then see Daryl, as we see Daryl running with the kids, doing what Rick asked him to do in the last episode. As we see in this version, it's not Ezekiel that's rescuing the kids, it is Daryl. And we see Daryl with the rest of the kids, but then he realizes that Judith is missing. Now, as we would then cut to Judith, and this, just like in the TV show, I would show her killing some whispers on her own, some walkers that are mixed in, and I think this would be really cool. However, the difference is in this scene, you would have a whisper that would actually get the best of her, which I think is realistic, obviously. A young child, obviously, she would, be slain at one moment, but, 2 seconds later, it'd be like, oh, shoot, something happened. So the whisper would get the best of her, and the whisper is literally about to kill Judith. But then I would have a scene where Carl in this version comes in and murders this whisper, slices the whisper's throat in front of his young sister to save her life. And in this sequence, you would see the blood from the whisper's throat go all over Judith. And it would just show you the realism of what exactly is going on. And Carl would then look at Judith, and Judith would have a funny remark. She would say, "I guess you won, big brother." And Carl would then say, "No, you win." Which would be a callback to 409 when Carl said, "I win," except now he's saying it to Judith and he saves her life. So then, as we see Dwight and Sherry fighting some of these whispers in the crowd of the walkers. We would then see a whisper unfortunately comes up behind Sherry when she's not looking, and the whisper would slash Sherry in the stomach. As you would see, Dwight yells for his wife as he murders this whisper with one of his weapons. As we then see, Dwight picks Sherry up. As we can see, she's starting to bleed pretty badly. Dwight would look very scared as he would then kiss her on the forehead and say, "It's okay, honey. We're going to get you out of this. Come on." As we then see Morgan, he is killing these whispers with his axe. As we see, he kills a good few of them, but then Rick kills one to help him out. As he says, "You good?" Morgan says, "Yeah, I'm better than all right. Come on." We would then see Carl, and he runs up to Daryl as we see Daryl with the rest of the kids. As we then see Carl says, "I got her, come on." As we see Judith goes with the rest of the kids and Daryl. But as Carl splits off to go help his father fight the dead and the whispers, we see Daryl as he then is faced against 3 whispers that are blocking his way. As he tells the kids to stand behind him, as he grabs his Morning Star and starts killing these whispers in front of him, mixed with a few walkers. But then, as we see Daryl starts to get overcrowded, we then see the whispers start to get the best of him. As he then sees Earl and tells Earl to get the kids out of the hilltop now, he'll hold them off. Earl then accepts and then tells Judith and the rest of the kids to go and to get to a safe place. As Daryl is heroically willing to give his life for the kids, which I think would be very much in Daryl's character because we know how he feels about the kids. As we see the whispers have him pinned down, we then see Eugene. And unlike the TV show, when Eugene is just looking at the Barrington house and then he just runs like an idiot, this version would be different. Eugene would look at the Barrington house, and instead of running inside looking for a damn radio, which, let's be honest, that would make no sense, instead of that, in this version, Eugene would see a few people that are trapped inside of the Barrington house as it's lit on fire. And Eugene would notice that these people are injured, right? And Eugene would then go towards the Barrington house, and Rosita be like, "Eugene, what are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm doing what I need to do." As you would see Eugene go inside the Barrington house to actually put his life on the line to save other people. And he would do that too before the house blows up completely. Eugene would actually put his life on the line to save other people. And this would be showing his evolution. He's not selfish and says, "Oh, I want to go get the radio," like in the original show. This one is Eugene putting his life on the line to help people that need his help. And I think that would be a massive, massive moment for his character. We then see Glenn as he is fighting through these walkers, as he's yelling, "Herschel! Herschel!" He's looking for Herschel in a panic, as he definitely thinks that something may have happened to Herschel. Now, obviously, Glenn would not know that the kids have been taken away to safety outside of Hilltop by Earl, but obviously he is panicking, especially after the death of Maggie. This would definitely kind of worry him, and I would have Glenn have to face off against some whispers as they would then start to surround him. And then we see Rick and Michonne fighting these walkers as they're starting to overpower them. As we see the hilltop on fire, and as Rick looks at Michonne and says, "This is a lost cause. We have to retreat." As we see, they have no choice but to give up. The hilltop is gone, their fighters are going down, the place is in disarray, and they may die too. And Rick realizes that. As we see Daryl pinned down, as we see Glenn surrounded, as we see Eugene rescuing some people, as we see Morgan is tired, as we see all these people are just at their absolute lowest. But then we see a huge bunch of these walkers get shot down and blown up. As we see several whispers getting gunned down, as Rick sees a cavalry coming, as he then fights to the death with Michonne, Daryl then stabs the whispers that had him down. Glenn then starts fighting these whispers. Morgan then comes up and saves Glenn's life from some of these whispers. As we see a bunch of men with machine guns start gunning down these walkers and whispers. As we then see the person who did it is Father Gabriel. We see Father Gabriel comes in at the last minute and saves their life. As Rosita sees this and she smiles, they see a Whisper on the ground limping. As Gabriel stands over him holding his shotgun, as he says, "You ever hear the one about the dumbass that brought a knife to a gunfight? Didn't think so. In the name of God, I sentence you to death." He would shoot him as Gabriel has now just saved the day. As we see what's left of our group just standing in the disarray of the hilltop, as we then see Rick stands in front of the Barrington house, as we can see everything is destroyed, the kids are gone, and everyone is just standing there wondering what are they going to do next. And I would keep this line from the comic books, and it's one thing that I think the show very much missed an opportunity of. I would have Michonne, as she stands in front of the Barrington house with Rick, she would look at him and she would say, "Yay, we won." And obviously that is a line from the comic books that I think is incredibly done. And I think for Michonne kind of has that type of attitude as well too, you know what I mean? So I think that would really go with Michonne in this. And she's very sarcastic and very serious though at the same time. And I always felt that that line very much matched her type of mannerisms and stuff like that. But I will say that right there is how I would do the Hilltop battle in a way more just overall showing what happens, more realistic fight, more just action, more just seeing how things would go down, not cutting it off so quickly. We saw a bunch last episode. We also saw a bunch this episode, but now we have the aftermath of the battle. Now, after the battle is done, we would then see the aftermath of what happened as we fade into the next day. Now, I wouldn't change anything from this scene, really. You would have them standing there. You have Alpha, and she's like, yeah, like, you know, through the heart, or whatever. He's like, oh, shit, my bad. And she's like, don't miss again. And obviously, in this scene, the number one thing that he would say is like, man, I really need to show y'all how to savor a victory. And she's like, well, it's not a victory if I don't have everything I want. And you'd have Negan that would kind of request, like, Lydia, and you'd have Beta that steps in and be like, not your concern. And obviously, this scene, I wouldn't change anything about. Realistic, she wants her daughter, of course. And you have Beta, of course, that's like, I will not stop until I get her home to you. And Negan would kind of step in his way as Beta would kind of stand there and he'd be like, hey, I'm at your service, Frowny McTwo-Knives. Love it. It's a great line from the comics, and I think they adapted it very well. Now, you would also have a sequence in this one, and this would be slightly different from the TV show, where in this version, you would have Dwight, and he's running with Sherry in his arms, trying to get her to a safe place, right? And in this version, Negan would stop, and he would see Dwight carrying Sherry in his arms. And Dwight would look at Negan with just pure anger. And he'd literally just be standing there completely shocked to see Negan dressed like a Whisper. And obviously, Negan would ask in this version, like, what happened to her? And Dwight would say, don't. And, you know, Negan would be like, Dwight, I'm not. And Dwight would get the line in this one, enough of your bullshit, you know, and he'd kind of scream at him. And then walkers would get in the way. Dwight would split off to go help his wife, and Negan would split off as well. And I think this would be very cool to have Dwight and Negan interact in this type of way. Now, obviously, I would also have Negan, he would find Lydia, and he would capture Lydia, and he would say, sorry, Lydia, your shit is done. Which obviously sets up for stuff later, and I think in this instance, I think this scene works perfectly well. Now, the next scene we would show is a sequence of Rick, Daryl, and the rest of the crew, obviously after the Battle of Hilltop, and they're out there looking for the kids, obviously. They're out there trying to find them, and I would have a scene, and I think it would show the realism of this, is Glenn would kind of get the Nabila role, except a lot, you know, more dramatic, and he would say, like, look, like, I'm not stopping, and Rick would kind of give Glenn a bottle of water and say, hey, look, man, you need to drink, like, you know, we've been up all night, man, you're starting to not look so good, and Glenn would actually kind of be persistent, and he would actually say, like, Rick, I'm not stopping, I gotta find my boy, you know, and Rick would just kind of be like, look, man, I understand, and Glenn would say, no, you don't, and Glenn would just stop, and he would say, you know what the first thing Abraham did when we first met each other? I told him that I would not stop at anything to find Maggie, and you know what? I didn't, and I found her, but he didn't believe me. No, he didn't believe me at all. He told me that she's very well probably dead already, and you know what I did? I punched him in the face. So I hope you're not telling me to stop, because I'll do the same thing as I did back then. I'm finding my boy no matter what. And he would just keep walking, and it'd be like, damn, Glenn, like, holy crap. We would understand, though. He's really, really hurt after the death of Maggie. We've seen it. The death of Maggie has really taken a toll on him, and he is 100% his life for his boy, 100%. And obviously, that's what this scene would show. And I think it would just show the caring father in him, and it would show how much he really does not want to lose someone else close to him. And I think that's what that scene would kind of indicate. Now, they would check the one house, obviously, and they would notice that nobody's there. Just like in the show, Glenn would look upset. He would look furious. And obviously, Daryl would kind of step in and be like, listen, like, we'll find them, all right? There's plenty other places, plenty other emergency places that we set up, over the years that, they may have gone to. We'll find them. We'll check the area. They got to be around here somewhere. Rick would kind of nod to him as they would keep going to look for the families that ran away. Now, obviously, in this scene, and I wouldn't change anything from this, I think the show did it in a fantastic way. You have Earl that's taking care of the kids. You have Judith that's there. The only difference is in this version that we would see Herschel as one of the kids. That's really the only difference. And aside from that, it would basically be the same. You would have Earl, basically, he would kind of be like, hey, shh, and he would kind of go into the other room. And in this sequence, you would see the same thing. He is, putting that thing, that, spike in the table and stuff, and he's looking to do something. We don't know what exactly. But then we reveal the bite. Now, as we reveal that Earl is bitten, obviously Judith would find out about this, and we would be dealing with the same situation. Judith would have to be kind of a grown-up in this scene, and I like the way the show tests her character like this, and I think that this is something that I'm going to leave the same. I think it's a really realistic situation where it's like, yeah, you protect the kids from me and put me down, if I turn, stuff like that. I love the realism there, and you would see Judith let him be, and he put that spike through his head, and I would like the realism here too. I think it's realistic. He slightly misses, and we would see that Judith would have to put him down just narrowly, and it would get pretty close. And I like this death. I really do, and I like that Judith has to put him down. And just like in the show, I would have, of course, except in this version, Rick, Michonne, Daryl, and our crew, they would find, obviously, the kids. They would find them all. And you would have Glenn that would reunite with his son, obviously, which is, really a big moment there. And you would see everybody come together. And then Rick, which I think would be so much better, Rick and Carl would find Judith sitting in the corner of the room. And you would have a nice Grimes family kind of just hug moment where you see Rick and you see Carl, and they would kind of comfort Judith as they basically see what she had to do. And Rick would kind of take Judith's sword from her hand, and he would say, I'm sorry you had to do that. And Judith would say, I'm not, I had to. As we would see a wonderful Grimes family reunion. Now, we would see Negan as he's walking with Alpha, as he is walking her to the cabin. As we would see, and I would keep this the same as the show too. I love this sympathetic moment where Negan kind of just pours his heart out towards Alpha about Lucille and, how he lost her to cancer and stuff like that. And then Alpha would just literally go with, yeah, well, death set her free and it took your wife. And it's like, oh my God, you sick monster, And he would try his best to really just reel it in that it's like, I've been through stuff too. But here's the difference with this scene. And this is when the writers really screwed up this scene. There is absolutely no way that I would have Negan crying in front of Alpha. That is just not something that the writers should have done, and I am not going to do it here. And I am not going to do a sequence where Negan is like, oh, you shouldn't, kill your daughter instead. No, that right there is ridiculous, and he knows that. He knows what Alpha wants to do. Negan is smart enough to know that, and I do not want him to do that at all. But he would talk about his wife, and as soon as she would kind of talk about his wife like that, that would be enough to really just pump him up and really just get him into that mode, you know what I mean? So then he would lead her towards this cabin. As we would then see, Lydia is locked inside. As she is getting out of the ropes and as she's getting close to the door, we would then see Alpha, and I love this, the way they did this. Alpha would walk up to the cabin. You would have Negan, of course. He would give her one final kiss and stuff like that. Love everything there. As basically you would have Lydia that is breaking out. And then As she turns the door, and then as Alpha is ready to open the door, we would reveal they are in two different spots. Love that, would not change that at all. And as soon as Alpha realizes that this is not where Lydia is, she would turn around in confusion and bam, Negan would slash her throat and he would hold her just like the comics, except once again, let's change something massive here. He wouldn't cry and kiss her on the frickin' head. I don't know what the hell the writers are trying to do. This would be way different. He would actually smile at her and he would give her that classic Negan smile. And Negan would literally be holding her as she falls to her death. And then he would then start cutting her head off as he then sits there and says, "Well, I know someone that's going to want to get a look at you." And we would keep it a mystery as we then see Negan rolls the head up to a certain someone, as we then pan up to then see Rick. As Rick would look at Negan with a smirk on his face, and he would say, "It's about time. I thought you'd never do this." Revealing that he and Negan were secretly working together. So that was The Walking Dead Rewrites, Season 8, Episode 13, Walk With Us. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. It has been so long since I've said that outro. It has been so long. And I want to take the ending of this rewrite to kind of state that there will be a full video where I'll kind of explain where these have been. I do recognize that it has been a long time, longer than it should have taken for me to get the next one out. So I do apologize to all the people that have been waiting for this. My life has just been so busy, and the daily videos, and obviously I have my own series that I write, my own original series called World Gone Mad, which has unfortunately taken up a lot of my time. So I do apologize that the rewrites have kind of been on the back burner, and obviously I know that people have been waiting for them. However, I'm glad to be back with them, and we will be pumping these out a lot more consistently, so stay tuned for more. But this one here, man, I really wanted to do a few things. Really enhance the battle that we got in the original series, really just flesh it out. And I'm sure you guys noticed, I really did not like that emotional, vulnerable side to Negan. I didn't like that side of things. So I decided to change that as well too. And we changed a few deaths around as well. We did not include Gamma's death, which is one that I'm sure you guys probably have noticed. There is more story for her to tell in my version of things. Glenn, very just, protective father in this one, and seeing where our characters are all at. We had Gabriel coming in, really just handling his own, being kind of a badass as we know him to be and stuff. And it was a very fun episode to do. And there's a lot of things with the last 3 episodes this season, which, yes, we're getting close to the end of season 8, that I cannot wait for y'all to see. There's a lot of things that we're going to be doing, a lot of changes from the show, and a lot of comic accurate moments. And I'm very curious to see what you guys think about the final 3 episodes of this season. But we're back with the rewrites again, and we'll be back very soon with episode 14. Don't worry, I'm not going to leave y'all for 2 years. Episode 14 is already being worked on, so it'll be coming out soon. And that'll be that, guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for stopping by, and we'll be back because, of course, stay tuned. The next episode is The Walking Dead Rewrites, Season 8, Episode 14, Half Moon. Thanks for watching.
Born in the dark alleys, city of concrete. Dan's reviews blowing up, never taste defeat. Walking Dead dissected every plot twist beat. World gone mad, TV junkies hit a treat. Typing up scripts, marathon through the night. His opinions hit harder than a street fight scene. Every episode, brain sharper than a knife. He's the beacon of critique, shedding TV light.